Hello, everybody. We're going to be reading a book to kick us off for the week. It's all about pollination. But before we even read this book, we're going to talk about that just a little bit. So, what is a pollinator, or what is pollination? All of our flowering plants have a kind of dust in them. It's like a little yellow dust, and we call it pollen. And that has all the genetic information for a plant in it. Just like our DNA has all the information that our bodies need, the pollen has all that information for a plant. And in order for a plant to make another plant or produce a seed that's going to grow into another plant, that pollen has to move from one plant to another plant. Or sometimes even it might move around on the same plant, but we won't get into that. So that pollen needs to move from this plant over here to this plant over here. Now, for some plants, like our trees, or a lot of our trees, not all of them, the wind might move that pollen. So I just have been cleaning my deck for, it seems like weeks, because all these pine trees like rain down this big cloud of yellow pollen, right? So that's wind moving that pollen around, and it's going to go to another tree. And when that pollen mixes, then they can make a seed. So in the case of a pine tree, it will grow a pine cone, and that seed inside the pine cone might grow into a new pine tree. With a lot of our flowers, some flowers are wind pollinated, but a lot of them need a helper to get that pollen from one plant to another. And a lot of different animals can be helpers to those plants, and we call them pollinators. So for example, when a honeybee comes to this flower and it is there to sip the nectar, like a sweet juice inside the flower, it is collecting pollen all over its body, and when it travels to a different flower, some of that pollen falls off on that other flower, and that's how our flowers are getting pollinated by different animals. It's not just bees that are pollinators. Butterflies, different kinds of beetles, hummingbirds, even bats are really good pollinators. So tons of different animals can be pollinators, and they are super duper important to our ecosystem. We're going to be reading a book that I just recently found. It's a pretty new book. It's called Flower Talk: How Plants Use Color to Communicate. And it was written by Sara Levine, and the illustrations are by Masha Dianes. This is, I know I say this all the time, but one of my new favorite books. I really love this book, and I think you're going to love it too. So let's find out how flowers use colors to talk and who they're talking to. Hey you! Psst! Down here! That's right, I'm a plant, and I'm talking to you. So we have this little succulent plant, or it's like a little cactus. But don't get too used to it. We don't make a habit of talking to humans. I want to clear up some of your crazy ideas about what the colors of flowers mean. We sit here growing, minding our own business, while you guys go on about how red roses stand for love and white ones are good for weddings and all kinds of mushy, ridiculous stuff. What a load of fertilizer. We're not using flowers to send information to you. So butt out, okay? We use our flowers to talk to the animals. Why? We need some help down here. What would you do if your legs were stuck in the ground for your entire life? How would you eat? Can't reach his pizza. How would you drink? Can't raise up his cup of tea. How would you get your pajamas on? It'd be hard if we couldn't move our legs. We can take care of some things ourselves. We get our food with help from the sun, and when it rains, our roots slurp up water. But we need help making our seeds, our babies. What's more important than that? Without seeds, there'd be no more plants. We'd be finished, kaput. So when they're big flowers, they make seeds which grow new flowers in the plant life cycle. To make a seed, we need pollen from a different plant of our same type. How do we get that? We can't just waltz over and take some. That's why we need animals. So we see a butterfly and a bee and a hummingbird, all super awesome pollinators. Here's what we do. We trick them into carrying it for us. We're nice about it though. We pay them a little something for their efforts. Well, usually. How do we get them to help? We advertise. We hold up big signs. Our flowers are our signs. They say, come on over. We have a special treat for you. So flowers are those big signs calling to our pollinators to bring them over to the flowers. And believe me, they come. Who wouldn't? Especially if they're hungry. If we're in luck, they bring along some pollen from a flower they visited earlier. Do they know they're doing this? Who knows? And who cares? It works and everyone's happy. So a lot of times the pollinators, when they visit the flower, they're sipping on the nectar, that sweet juice in the flower, or even sometimes the bees are feeding some of the pollen to their young. So the pollinators get a delicious treat, and the flowers get their pollen to move around. Lots of different flowers and lots of different pollinators. So what's the deal with colors? A flower's color invites specific animals to visit. You seem like a bright kid, so I'm going to let you in on the conversation. Then maybe you could do me a favor and tell the other humans about it, okay? Red flowers are usually talking to birds. The red flower's message is a top secret one, for birds only. Most other pollinators are insects, and they can't see the color red. A red flower says, hey hummingbird, over here, carry my pollen, and I'll give you a sip of nectar. By the way, red flowers don't have much of an odor. Birds have a horrible sense of smell, so why bother making perfume for them? So next time you see a red flower, smell it. Does it smell like anything? Blue and purple flowers talk to bees. Bees need flower pollen to feed their babies. They have special pockets on their legs to carry it home to their young. It's called a pollen basket. But some pollen always gets stuck on their bodies and passes to the next flowers they visit. Blue and purple flowers are saying, yo bee, could you help me move some of this pollen and take some home for the kids? See, we can be thoughtful too. Speaking of bees, I don't know if you saw that or you could hear that big bumblebee that just came. Maybe it was attracted to my flower. Yellow flowers are also talking to bees. Bees are our top helpers. I heard that scientists just figure out that bees have 3 favorite colors: blue, purple, and yellow. Took you guys long enough. We've known this for ages. That's why so many of us make flowers in these colors. We like reliable help. Here's what a yellow flower says. Bees, bargain basement this way. Free food. Some white flowers talk to moths and bats. When are moths and bats out? That's right, at night. What do we call an animal that's awake during the night? Nocturnal, absolutely. Moths and bats fly mostly at night. And when it's dark outside, what color shows up best? White, of course. White flowers are like giant signs that say, hey, come get your free nectar here. White flowers also put out perfume as an extra guide to help these animals find them. Frankly, I don't care for it myself, but I guess to a moth or a bat, it smells pretty good. What color is this? Brown flowers often talk to flies. Here's what they're saying. Get a whiff of our perfume. It's stinky, just the way you like it. This is true. Brown flowers reek like something dead and rotten. Ugh. And flies need to lay their eggs on dead things so their maggot babies will have something to eat when they hatch. I know, so gross. But a brown flower doesn't help a mama fly at all. She gets drawn in by the stench, but there's no meat there, just a flower tricking a bug into doing work for free. The flower gets pollen, but the fly gets nothing. The only rotten thing around here is the deal. Tricky brown flowers. Green flowers aren't talking to anyone. Are they just shy? No, they don't talk to animals because they don't need help. Their pollen is carried by the wind. Plants with green flowers are just green all over because they don't need animals to notice them. Would you bother getting dressed up if you didn't need to? I know I wouldn't. I think we can probably all relate to that recently. Do animals only go to flowers that are their favorite colors? No, but they usually do. For example, butterflies are drawn more to a flower's shape than its color. Butterflies like a steady platform to land on and tubes filled with nectar to sip with their long, curly tongues. They visit flowers of many colors, but even butterflies have favorites: white, purple, yellow, pink, red, and orange. That's a lot of favorites, don't you think? It's been good chatting, but it's time for you to leave now. Go take a hike. I'm pretty busy, in case you haven't noticed. I'm making a new flower. It's going to be yellow, with a nice, roomy platform. I'm just about done with it. But before you leave, do you want to guess who I'm getting ready to talk to next? So who would this flower be talking to if it's yellow? Do you remember? A bee and a butterfly. It has more about pollination here, but I won't read through all of that, and more about protecting our pollinators, which I do want to read through really quick. It says, do you know that some insect pollinators are in trouble? This is a big problem because plants rely on these animals to carry pollen. Without pollination, plants can't make new seeds. And without seeds, new plants can't grow. Many people don't think about how important plants are. We actually need them to survive. Plants are our food and our shelter, and they even make the air that we breathe. Here are some things you and your family can do to help support the pollinators. Don't use chemicals that hurt insects on your lawn or garden. So sometimes we might apply herbicides on our yard to kill the weeds, or we might even apply pesticides if there are things eating the plants in our yard, and those things can be really harmful to some of our pollinators. Plant a bee or a butterfly garden so these animal pollinators have a new place to eat and live. It's always a good idea. Tell other people about this problem so that they can help too. For more tips, check out our pollinator partnership at www.pollinator.org. So you could go online with a parent and check that out. So now that we know that flowers are trying to talk to different animals with their different colors, go out on a walk, check out, see if you can find some pollinators, see if you can find some flowers, see if you can smell a red one and a white one and which one you think smells better. We'll see you next week with another theme and more activities. Bye.